Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us once again. This is the MSAHA Basketball Weekly Podcast. I'm Trellis Williams, and joining us once again is our co-host, Ollie Hammonds. He's a beat writer for the TSJW Network, representing the Laurel Nighthawks. Does the Nighthawk beat? Ollie, man, this is our most exciting show yet, man. Ready to go.
Yeah, man, we got a show just about as crammed full as these last 3 days of the week are going to be, and we've talked about it, and it's here, and I think everybody's excited, waiting to see what the end of Saturday is going to be like.
Yeah, so it's, as you can tell, it is playoff time right here for the MSAHA basketball. The playoffs will be down in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, starting on Thursday morning, finishing on Saturday afternoon with the championships. And so before we get into talking about playoffs, we're going to talk about this past week. And so we had a few regular season games to finish out the regular season. And then we also had the 14U playoffs, which we'll talk about in just a second. So in 18U boys, the Laurel Nighthawks had two games over the course of the end of last week. The Laurel Nighthawks defeated the Jacksonvictors 61-58. Now, I was down there. I was calling the ball game with Dima Mixon, and that was just a very exciting game. The Victors were without Colin Crosby, but they still put together a very impressive performance with great shooting from Jude Williams and Nash Spicer, and also good inside play as well. But the Laurel Nighthawks took some big shots there from the Jacksonvictors, but were able to overcome in the end and get the win with some good clutch play. Ollie, just tell us what you thought about it.
I think about fourth quarter, a few seconds left, Dima Mixon on the call said, "Nobody does lose this game." And he could not have been more right with that statement. That's a game that if anybody loses, they have nothing to hang their heads about, honestly. Both teams played aggressive and great basketball in the fourth quarter. First quarter kind of looked like it was going to be a kind of a blowout game, right? It was 20-6 at some point. Laurel's just in Jackson's head. We're thinking, okay, this is going to be kind of a boring game. And then all of a sudden, second quarter starts. It gets different. Jackson goes into the half actually in the lead at some point, coming from 20-point deficits. Third quarter saw all kinds of action. Close ball game at the end of the third. And then that fourth quarter, I think the fourth quarter actually was a great testament to Laurel's ability to handle the pressure. And Laurel's played some high-pressure ball games this season, and I think it showed in that game because the fact that, let's just break down the play that really kind of put Laurel ahead for good. Jacob Morey hitting that three in the corner. Silas Ensign, who a possession earlier had hit a three to bring Laurel within a few points, right? Brings the ball down the court after a missed bonus free throw. And he can do one of two things here. He can either try to juke his defender and him be the big guy, or he can make the smart decision and be the team player and to pass the ball on the corner to open Jacob Morey. And that takes just where, you have to have the wherewithal to make that decision in the moment right there. Because that's a high pressure situation. I think there was 14 seconds left on the clock when Silas made that pass. And a kid, Jacob Morey, who had yet to hit a three all night long, realizes in that moment, catch and shoot, I'm the guy who has to make this shot because nobody else was more wide open. And, of course, you saw Jackson not really used to the pressure, had a big-time miscommunication. In a 2-3 defense, when a guy's out on the corner, whose man is that, right? That's the forwards. And there was just a bit of a miscommunication. It can happen to any team, but, it's the worst place for it to happen. And I think that was really a showing of Laurel, showing that they can deal with the pressure. And then at the other end of the court, a time where Jackson could have possibly gotten a lead or a tie. Laurel plays that pass beautifully. Eli Carter plays the inbounds pass beautifully, picks it off. Just great clutch play by the Nighthawks.
Yeah, and you're talking about Silas Ensign's pass, but also Silas's shot that he made. 58-54 was the score. Jackson was leading, and there was like 20-something seconds left in the game, and Laurel rolled the ball down the floor, and then Silas gave it up to Eli, got it back to him, and knocked down the shot. And see, if he would have missed that shot and Jackson would have gotten the rebound, we're probably talking about Jackson getting a big win. But he was able to knock that one down right there in the clutch, then had the wherewithal to make that pass. So there's great clutch play there from the Laurel Nighthawks to get the win. And that was
as well as Kai Welch. I forgot about this. Nash Spicer gets that rebound, comes down the court, and it looked like it was going to be a tie ball game. Kai Welch, though, plays that, we talk about, I know Coach Cliff talks to our guys about the perfect block. What is the perfect block of a shot, right? You never want to swat, and you want to time it perfectly. Kai Welch timed that block perfectly, and I think got a bit of a favorable call, but they had that chance, and then Eli Carter picks off the pass. But I mean, just clutch play all around. I mean, that last minute was owned by the Nighthawks clutch play.
Yeah. So after that game on the Saturday, the Laurel Nighthawks went down to Louisiana to take on the PCA Paladins, and they were able to knock off the number 1 seed, the PCA Paladins, 57 to 56. Win that one by 1 point. And there is an update on Colin Erickson. He didn't play in that game, but he will be playing in the playoffs, the MSAHA playoffs. So that is great news. Heard that from Coach Chris himself. So that's good news there. But the Laurel Nighthawks able to defeat the PCA Paladins, so they split the games. Of course, it didn't affect the standings at all. The PCA Paladins are still number 1 in the conference. But what did you think about that ball game?
For the ball game, I want to let's talk about something really quick about the injuries. The best thing about the injuries are you never want to hear injuries, but the coolest thing and the best thing is that all these people are going to be available for the tournament. I mean, of course, with the exceptions of Elliott Tulip, which we still wish, get better soon. That's a tough one to take. But, Colin Erickson and Colin Crosby, as a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, will be back for the tournaments. That's very fortunate for those teams, for those guys. But the game really kind of similar to the Jackson game. Laurel comes out to a big lead. PCA, of course, we all know this from PCA. No lead is ever comfortable unless if there's 30 seconds left and you lead by more than 9. You know what I mean? They can hit the threes in a moment's notice. They just get hot behind the 3-point arc. Beginning of the game, they really were not all that hot, and then they got hot in the second half. Laurel comes out to a big lead. Leads by what you could call a slim margin against PCA by 12. And then PCA kind of battles back, and then at the last second, it was Laurel on top. I think it's a big time win. Colin Erickson playing or not to beat the number 1 seed. But once again, another good quality game.
Yeah, and so we're going to touch on a little bit of 18U girls. It was the Laurel Lady Hawks taking on the Jacksonvictors, got the 45-27 win to just continue to pad their dominance on the conference that has been this year. They also beat PCA, the number 2 seed, 51-30, and so they're looking pretty good heading into the tournament. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on. In the 16U boys, though, the Jacksonvictors upset the Laurel Nighthawks 42-40, and that really helped the Jacksonvictors because they were sitting in the 7 spot and they were going to have to face the Muddy River Counselors in the first round. And now they were able to get that win. They popped up 2 spots, leapfrogging Meridian and Hattiesburg, and then now that game's going to be the first round game, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But the Jacksonvictors beating the Laurel Nighthawks by 2 points right at the end, and you were part of that game. So what did you think about that one?
I think it was good quality play from both teams. Laurel kind of put themselves in a hole. We kind of came out slow, and Jackson didn't. Jackson came out firing on all cylinders, and I'm really proud of our guys to even make it that close. Jackson, you got to tip your cap to a team every once in a while whenever you lose to them. They played a good quality basketball game. Honestly, I'm not upset with that. As a player, personally, not upset with that result. Jackson played a great ball game. So did we. Just turns out Jackson hit the last shot. Cooper hit that 3 there. I thought that was pretty big, but Jackson just came back and scored. Great game by them, and very fortunate for them to leapfrog those 2 places because Muddy River is not an easy team in 16U boys this year to face the first round.
Yeah, and just it was some great clutch play there from the Victors too. You had Brody Newton there running the point, and he was able to take that pressure that he was taking from the Nighthawks. I mean, because the Nighthawks put some serious pressure on him. He's able to take that. Sadell Hendricks got some clutch buckets there at the end, and so definitely some good credit there for the Jacksonvictors getting a win that wasn't expected out of them. So I mean, that was a good win for them. Also, the Muddy River Counselors took on the Mount Zion Lions to finish off the year. Last home game for the Counselors as well. 66-46, the Counselors took care of business, winning their 10th game of the season, moving to 10-1 in conference play. But the Mount Zion Lions able to pull out 46 points on them there. And what did you think about that game?
Yeah, that's really kind of an expected outcome. Muddy River, it was their game to lose, really, and they go out. They get that win. That's what you need to do, right? If you're going to be a championship caliber team, which is, I know that's what Muddy River's looking at right now. But the big win, I think, for those two teams is Mount Zion putting up 46. Last few games, they've been putting up some pretty big offensive numbers when you think about it. A high scoring game against Scott County, and now 46 points to the number 2 seed Muddy River Counselors. So pretty big play from Mount Zion.
Yep. So now we're gonna move into talking about some about the 14U tournaments. So we made some kind of predictions, but we were able to point out the favorites of those two tournaments, and the favorites ended up pulling it out, and it was the Counselors were able to win the 14U boys tournament. No game actually came within 20 points there. The Lady Hawks ran the 14U girls tournament with every game being in double-digit victory, and so definitely the kind of things we expected. But there were also some good games in the other games. As you know, in the 14U boys had PCA. PCA found themselves, since they had not played 14U all season, in the boys, they found themselves being the 5th seed, the lowest seed, as they had to play in. They beat Jackson, played Muddy River, took the loss, but then they got wins over Laurel, Hattiesburg, and then had to play Muddy River again to try to beat them twice. Ended up taking the loss, but they had a good tournament. Hattiesburg made a run at it. They barely lost to PCA at the end there. That was the boys. And the girls, you had some teams that hadn't really got a chance to play as 14U girls teams as much. The Counselors were able to win their first ever girls game in history, beating the Scott County Flames, even though Scott County was able to get them back later on. Meridian took 2 losses and got out. But what'd you think about it? Because I know you weren't able to be there for those games, but what'd you think about how it went?
I think it's crazy hearing how many games were played out in one day.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. That's a ton of basketball games for one day. So, me and you kind of sort of made our predictions, and they came out right. Muddy River, of course, just stomps on everybody, gets that win. This is a core group that we're going to see, in years be one of the top teams. Sort of Jackson level when you think about it. Jackson winning 7 championships in a row. Mm-hmm. This is a team that's shaping up to kind of be another sort of Jacksonvictors team there, to be just a dominant team in the conference when they get older. And that 14U boys group, 14U girls, I think the Lady Hawks have a great chance to table this year with all the girls championships. Yeah. They got their first one. Great play by them. So, not surprising outcomes, but, still a good tournament.
Yeah, and both those teams had been undefeated in conference in the conference play beforehand. The Laurel Lady Hawks have not lost a single conference game this year. And 18U, 16U, or 14U, that's quite the season. Quite the season they've had. So if we find ourselves seeing any team winning girls championships other than Laurel Lady Hawks, that would be quite the story, and that would be very impressive. So, but we will see. You still have to play the game. And you have to give credit. The Meridian Flyers girls team is a very competitive team. So we'll see how how those games turn out. We'll talk about that a little later as well. So moving into, we're going to talk about the playoffs. So it's here. We've just got the brackets today. And And so we got some good stuff here. Starting off with some 18U boys action. It will start off at 10:15 a.m. on Thursday morning in Hattiesburg. It will be the number 4 seed, the Jacksonvictors, taking on the number 5 seed, Muddy River Counselors. The winner of that game will take on the number 1 seed, the PCA Paladins. They will play at 10:15 in the morning on Thursday. Now, when these two teams played each other this season, the Muddy River Counselors won the second game by 22 points, 67-45. But the first game was 62-60. The Jacksonvictors took the win. So unclear who's going to win. Who's going to win these games. Both teams had the same conference record for the year as well. Ollie, man, what do you think's coming up out of this one?
I think it's a sucky draw if you're PCA, right? You got to play one of those two teams who, kind of have struck some hard luck this season. When you think about it, they're good basketball teams. Jackson has had a lot of hard luck this season, but I mean, as we saw from the Laurel game, they challenged a number 2 seed who some might consider the favorites right now for the HNU Boys State Championship. Brought them down to the last second. So they're a good basketball team. Muddy River beat Jackson last time, 20-plus points. So I can't call that game. I really can't. And I also can't call the winner of that game against PCA. That's going to be a good game to watch too. So we're going to have to just see how that plays out.
Yeah, that is about as close of a call as you can see in these matchups that I've looked at. I mean, that is a tough one. I mean, you're talking about it in every single way. They split the 2 games they played in. You see, they had the same conference record. I mean, they're in the same city. So it's just that'll be interesting and that'll be the first 18U game. And so we'll start off on a good note there with probably a very competitive game.
The winner of that game also, that's going to be a good game to see the winner of that game versus PCA. Really, it's going to be a really, really good game to watch. So,
yeah, for sure, because the Muddy River Counselors, they ended up losing to PCA Paladins in Monroe. But at the beginning, the Counselors were in the lead, but they stalled scoring. PCA ended up taking the win and stuff. But in the Jackson and PCA game, it was a close game to the end. 70-67 was the final score. So if you're PCA, you're the number 1 seed. You know that you can win the championship because you've beaten everybody. You know you can do it. You're the number 1 seed. You feel like it's yours to lose. But you also know that you're vulnerable. Teams could beat you. So you're gonna have to play well, and so that's credit to them because it's not they don't win because they're all big and tall. They win because they can shoot really well, and then they play well together. So
we've talked about that too, about the MSAHA, how great the competition has become over the past couple years. That 4 and 5 seeds can rival number 1 seed. So you're never ever really comfortable any seed, but it's really neat to see how competitive this conference is.
Yeah, and so then in the second game of the day, it'll be another 18U ball game. You got the Meridian Flyers and the Tupelo Titans. So the Tupelo Titans, obviously, in their first season as an MSAHA team. That'll be at 11:30 on Thursday morning, of course. That's a 3 and 6 seed matchup there. The Meridian Flyers are short-handed as they do not have Elliott Tulip anymore. But in the last 2 weeks, Coach Raspberry's been working with those guys, trying to get them ready to play with the squad that they have. So I would expect it to be different than what we saw in their game against the Jacksonvictors, where they got beat by 35 points right after Elliott Tulip got hurt. I feel like they're going to be a lot more well connected as a group with this squad here as they take on the Tupelo Titans. What do you see going into that game?
I think Meridian's going to have to kind of find their identity at the wrong time. Kind of a tough time. Going to have to find their identity as a team in the tournament. I think they can do it. Coach Mike Raspberry is a very good coach. He's coached some great teams who many people thought were kind of underdogs into situations where, taking last playoffs, right? Meridian almost beat PCA in PCA's first game in the tournament. PCA was the number 1 seed last year. So Coach Mike Raspberry's a very good coach, and I think he's going to do great things with that team.
Yeah. So the Meridian Flyers, definitely, they're going to find themselves. It's just like you're saying. They're going to have to find. They're going to have to find their identity as a team, but I feel like that they've probably been working on it the last 2 weeks. Of course, whoever wins that game is going to have a tough go playing the Laurel Nighthawks, who've been hot. I mean, the Nighthawks have been winning. They ever since that Little Rock loss in Monroe, they've won 5 straight. So they are definitely they're definitely riding high heading into the conference, and we'll talk about that too a little bit later as well. But so yeah, now moving into some 18U girls action. The first games will be the number 5 seed Hattiesburg Forerunners and the number 4 seed Jacksonvictors. That will be a play-in game. That game will be at 11:30 on Thursday morning. Now, so with this, the Jackson Lady Victors, they played the Laurel Lady Hawks the other day, and they struggle with Laurel, but everybody's struggling with Laurel, huh? But they kind of struggle with Laurel. When it came to Hattiesburg, they split them. The first game of the season, it looked like Hattiesburg was going to have like a really good 18U girls team as they won by 30 points against Jackson in the first game of the season. But it's been a struggle for Hattiesburg. They're 1-12 now, so they've lost 12 the last 12 after that first game. So they're going to be looking for a chance to win. Hattiesburg's been getting hurt. They have injured players, so it's kind of tough for Hattiesburg there. Jackson, I actually think, is actually coming together where they're getting their players back. They had a thing over the course of the season where they kept missing players and things like that. I think now they're actually having their team together. So what do you think? What do you think about that game there?
Honestly, I don't know much about the two teams. I can't speak super intelligently about the two teams, but if seeding says anything, it'll be a close game. I think it'll be a fun game. I think you're right. Jackson is kind of coming together at the right moment. And, we're seeing this with this season mostly. Some teams are putting it together at the right moment, and some teams are falling apart at the wrong moment.
Yeah.
So we're just going to have to kind of see. And Jackson, fortunately for them, is one of those teams that's putting it together at the right moment.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and actually, since I have on that note, I have an update on the Muddy River counselors too. So Chris Purnell, who went down with a pulled calf, he is good. He's 100%, and he'll be playing this weekend as well. So that's good. Because it kind of was looking like the counselors might fall apart at the last moment. If you have no Chris Purnell and you have obviously Jimmy Baker's out for the season, but if you have no Chris Purnell and if like William Leach would have been out, both those guys supposed to play this weekend, so that's good for them. Going back to talking about that. Also, Meridian Flyers and the PCA Paladins here in 18U girls. That game will actually happen at 3:15 on Thursday. Those two teams will play each other. Now, these teams only played one time this season, and the PCA Paladins won 57-15. So that's a big margin there. But the Meridian Flyers had half their team. So really, these two teams have not played in a full strength situation. Of course, PCA did give them a 42-point beatdown in that shorthanded situation. So it's PCA still probably the definitely the more likely team there in that scenario. But I would argue that this is probably going to be a good game. What do you think?
I think it is going to be a good game. It's going to be a great game. Thing about missing people is that you can add offensive points, but you can also add defense, right? Defense taking points away from the other team. So I think Meridian is going to have a great chance against PCA in that game.
All right, so now we're going to talk about possibly some of the most interesting, probably the most interesting tournament. Even though the 18U boys is the main tournament, the most interesting tournament most likely will probably be the 16U tournament, since we got 8 teams included in there. So first game we got is the number 1 seed PCA Paladins and the Mount Zion Lions. That will happen at 10:15 in the morning, Thursday morning. They will take each other on. That's the 1 and the 8 seed PCA and Mount Zion. And the Mount Zion Lions, they've only won one conference game this year. PCA Paladins are undefeated, of course, in conference. What do you think about that first round matchup?
I think for Mount Zion, you got to come in, just got to set a goal, right? Let's score this many points. So you just got to kind of meet that goal. And I think PCA, it's their game to lose. I think PCA has a great chance to win that ball game, and so that's going to be kind of a, I don't want to say not interesting game, but I do think if I had to make a choice, it'd be PCA in that game.
Yeah. So then the next game we have is the Laurel Nighthawks and the Jacksonvictors. Now, you'll be on that game. That will be a very interesting game because we just saw that game just the other night in Laurel. 42-40, Jackson took the win. Both these teams split the two games, and they both went 2 points. So very, very interesting game we have coming up. What do you think about that ball game, Laurel and Jackson?
I think it's going to be a close ball game. Sorry, a close ball game like it was the first recently. So I can't really make a call there.
Yeah, that should be a very good one there. That's a 4 and 5 seed game, which is obviously usually a close one there. Then going over, we've got the Scott County Flames and the Meridian Flyers at 12:45 on Thursday. Now, this is kind of tough because the Meridian Flyers, they relied heavily on Elliott Tulip. And so what's interesting about their record is that it's just a weird record because sometimes they would play Elliott a lot and sometimes they wouldn't. And so there are some games where they get beat by 30-something, and then there's some games where they beat somebody good. And so it's just very interesting how their record went. So it's just they end up at the 6th seed there. They're taking on the Scott County Flames, but now with no Elliott Tulip, I really see Scott County taking this one if they take care of business here. What do you think?
I think you're right. I think they're hitting Meridian at the right time to win from them.
Yeah, and then the last first round game, which the second round games will be on Friday, so this is all that's going to happen on Thursday here. The Muddy River Counselors taking on the Hattiesburg Forerunners. Now, the Counselors here will have they played the Forerunners twice this year, won both of them, but the Hattiesburg Forerunners, just as we've said all year, a dark horse team. Number 7 seed is kind of low for actually how good they are. So that should be, an interesting ball game there. 2 versus 7. What are you thinking from that one?
Tough draw for Muddy River. I think it's going to be one of the closest games in the first round, on par with Laurel and Jackson.
Yep. So it should be interesting there. All right, so that wraps up our first round playoff matchups here. And so we will finish off by talking about overall these conference tournaments. And who we see as being the favorites here. But first, let me go ahead and remind you to subscribe to the TSJW Network YouTube and also turn your notifications on, and that will help you keep track of streams that go up over the course of this weekend. Now these games are really packed in tight in these 3 days, so it's going to be tough to get a whole bunch of streams up on Thursday and Friday, but Saturday, the plan is to have all those championship games being streamed right there on the TSJW Network YouTube. So please go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. All right, so now we're going to talk about overall, favorites here. So 16U girls, we're starting off. I see the Laurel Lady Hawks being the favorites here. They have not lost a single game in conference. They're 14-1 overall. Just won the district tournament in Monroe as well. What are you thinking? What's your idea of that?
Historical season, really, for the Lady Hawks. I think they got a great chance to close it down, and I'm with you on that. That's my favorite.
Yeah, they're the defending champions as well in 16U girls. So 16U boys, the defending champions are the Muddy River Counselors. Of course, they're the number 2 seed. PCA is the number 1 seed. And that's going to be a competitive field to see how that goes. Who would you take as your favorite in that situation?
Favorite's going to have to be Muddy River. Honestly, is the road going to be easy? No, I think Muddy River's going to have to be my favorite there.
Yeah, definitely. You kind of always have to give the defending champs a little bit of a little bit of leeway, even if they're the number 2 seed there. Of course, it's going to be a tough competition there with multiple teams in the conference, but definitely, obviously, the number 1 undefeated, number 1 seed, PCA Paladins. 18U girls, Laurel Lady Hawks. I'm going to have to say that one again. They are 18-1 in overall and 10-0 in the conference. I mean, you can't say anybody but them in that situation.
Oh, most definitely. They're my favorites too. I think they have a great opportunity to really solidify themselves as probably one of, if not the best ever MSAHA girls basketball organizations. The Lady Hawks organization this year, they could possibly run the table, and I think that would be really, really neat to see.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. And then finally with 18U boys, now this will be interesting here when it comes to the favorites here. It's with me, it's changed over the course of the time because, of course, in December I would have said the favorite was the PCA Paladins. Then when January came around, I still was like, PCA's got a good edge. Then the Meridian Flyers really got hot right there in mid-January. After beating the Laurel Nighthawks by 20, I was thinking, man, they might be the favorites. Then Elliott Tulip gets hurt, and they're no longer even in the picture of being a favorite. And then lately, the Laurel Nighthawks have been winning. They've beat the PCA Paladins twice in the past week. I know Colin Erickson didn't play in those games, but you have to say it's either the Laurel Nighthawks or the PCA Paladins as being favorites. Of course, really, it's still anybody. It's kind of anybody's tournament because you just don't know. Everybody's taking a loss in the conference. But right now, if you just went purely by who's surging right now, you would say the Laurel Nighthawks. But if you go by, who's had the best season so far, you probably say PCA. But what are you thinking?
I think regular season, PCA kind of ruled the regular season, but I think Laurel's getting hot at the right moment. I think Laurel's got this history of being one of the dominant organizations, and they're not just going to let a championship slip through their fingers. I think they are one of the favorites. I think you could list about 3 favorites. You're right. The 18U boys division this year in MSAHA basketball has been so competitive that you can't really make a call. If you had to go off who's hot right now, you'd go with Laurel. If you had to go off who had the best regular season, you'd go with PCA. If you had to go with who's got the best organization over history and championships, you'd probably go with Jackson. You really cannot call anybody right now.
Yeah. So, and therefore, it makes it even more interesting. So we're looking forward to it. The MSAHA Playoffs on TSJW Network, that will be this weekend, and even more so than games, we plan on doing putting out other forms of content over the course of the weekend, and we definitely look forward to it. And remember too, on Saturday we will be streaming. Lord willing, will be streaming, and we plan on having the Saturday morning game day show. We should be able to have Dima Mixon. We'll have Ollie as well, and of course with me. And then we'll be streaming the championship games there. Hopefully we can get some good streams on Thursday and Friday. Of course, it's packed in pretty hard, so we'll have to see how all that stuff goes. But we are looking forward to it. It is playoff time, folks. This is the week. MSAHA Playoffs on TSJW Network. We're looking forward to it. Ollie, thank you for doing this show. We have the Saturday morning show, but then we've got one more next week to kind of wrap up the season. But it's been fun doing these with you, man. But I'm looking forward to this weekend.
I most definitely am too, man.
Yeah, man, for sure. So thank you, everybody, for joining us for the MSAHA Basketball Weekly Podcast. I am Trellis Williams, and we out.